Yep. Well, we're going to continue on the defensive side of things because that is obviously the side that needs the most work. And if you've been tuning in over the past, we didn't do it last week because we were really focused. We had the long chat with James, and then we focused a little bit more on what we're looking for in minicamp. And we didn't mention that we were looking for the contract drama. We were looking at specific players, but that's neither here nor there. We just talked about Jair Alexander, the corner, a veteran corner coming in maybe from the outside that could bolster this group. Now, you mentioned not only do the Bengals have a long track record, particularly in outside free agency, maybe quote unquote bargain bin. Let's see what we can get out of these guys. And they did get of the names you and I mentioned, between Clements, between Newman, and Jones. I mean, they got good things out of those guys for a number of years. I mean, you could even say Reggie Nelson, who was a safety, but former high picks. And so that's where Jair Alexander makes some sense. But the Bengals themselves, even on their roster, that guys they have drafted, they have a number of high picks at cornerback, defensive back, right? You can go across the board, DJ Turner and Cam Taylor-Britt, who is one of our first make or break players, and this guy as well. And I don't think one argument can be made that I don't think he's had a real fair shake of things, both a lot of which outside of his control, which is positional changes, which is injuries, all kinds of different things have kind of popped up for Dax Hill. But this is now, the final straw here. He's got to find a fit. He's got to be able to play. We know he's got athleticism, speed, etc. He has flashed when he has been in there. I always go back to that. I think it was the 2023 season when Browning ended up taking over for Burrow after that wrist injury. But I swear, man, I'd have to look up what his passes defended were that year. But I swear he had his hands and dropped or whatever. Probably another 3 or 4 interceptions that year. And then, we always talk about the one against the Jags where he had it in his hands and then the guy catches it in the back of the end zone. It's a touchdown instead of an interception in the end zone. But regardless, Dax Hill has a lot to prove this year. Obviously staying healthy is the name of the game. And this is probably one of the biggest, I hate to use the word reclamation project with him, but this is probably one of the biggest projects for Al Golden this year. And if he can get Dax Hill to be an effective player in this defense, that would be a major feather in his cap going forward, because I think that it doesn't have to be, Pro Bowl level, but getting some solid play, consistent play out of Dax Hill would be pretty critical for this defense.
I think I'm gonna switch things up here a little bit. I think that Dax Hill is one of the biggest make or break players for the Bengals coaching staff in general. I think it's important for them to see what he can do for real, like this year. I think for him, the player, him having the 5th-year option already attached to him, like he's on the team through 2026. Like he's got a guaranteed almost $13 million salary in 2026. He's not going anywhere for the next 2 years. And the fact that he's coming off of an injury, he may not be 100% himself for at least part of this upcoming season. You would like to think that him still being young and incredible, well, arguably their best athlete on defense, period. Like that definitely helps you recover from these injuries a lot quicker than some other guys, especially combined with youth. But it may take him a little bit to become the full fleshed out player that he has the potential to be. But I don't think there's any excuses for the Bengals coaching staff in general to figure out where to put this guy and where to put him in the best position to succeed, because there's promise at cornerback with DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt in a contract year, Josh Newton, who flashes a rookie. There's no set in stone answers. There's nowhere in this secondary outside of safety, because you don't want to put him at safety again because that didn't work out. There's nowhere at cornerback that you wouldn't feel excited about Dax Hill. And it's just about finding where he fits in conjunction with the other guys in terms of making sure that they are in a good spot to succeed as well. So you want to have the entire group, put together in a conducive way where everyone is kind of hitting their stride and everyone feels comfortable with the roles. And that And Dax Hill is such a huge component of that as soon as he gets back and healthy. I think he said to Dan Horde or maybe to other reporters today, he's still a couple weeks out from being ready to kind of contribute in that way. He may have to wait a couple weeks in training camp to be fully cleared and everything like that, but he's going to have an opportunity in camp to win back a starting job. And he may not be, again, the best version of himself, but I think it's so critical for the Bengals. They can't wait until next year to be like, okay, where are we going to play Dax Hill? No, you need to figure that out this year, and probably before the season starts, so that you have some clarity on defense. Because I think so long as he's healthy, he can succeed both in the slot and on the boundary. I think there is an argument to be made that he might be better in the slot because that's where he played in college, but he did show a lot of promise before he got hurt last year in those 5 games. And I think it would have silenced a lot of people had he stayed healthy at that spot. So it's really about the Bengals just figuring out once and for all where to put Dax Hill, because you can't go into the actual last year of his contract still not knowing the answer to that question.
I still lean slot for me because of his performance in college, kind of a hybrid player a little bit for Michigan, and just with the athletic tight ends and that sort of thing. And then, like you said, coming back from an injury, maybe the ask of a slot guy initially is a little bit less than true boundary corner, right? I mean, you still have tall asks, but in terms of, you're working oftentimes more in a shorter space, a shorter area, right? From the slot, but regardless, you're right. I mean, there are flashes of both where you go, okay, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense. Or boundary and then kick into slot, that sort of thing. And then you bring a DJ Turner or whatever as he kicks into the slot. But he's we know, I don't have his RAS in front of me, but I mean, he's a tradesy guy, and
well over 9.
I could say that confidently without even looking. But yeah, he's a tradesy guy, and he's a guy that you just to your point, you absolutely have to figure out where that piece of the puzzle fits in, because if you do, I think he could be a really, really good player for this defense. But you just, I can't just hammer it home enough. You have to figure it out. And like you said, he's not going anywhere the next 2 years. So when we do these make or breaks, it's not just, oh, he's in trouble of being cut. It's not so much that. It's sometimes a player like Dax, it's like, you got to find your place. You got to find your fit. And like you said, the onus is on the coaching staff to figure that out. If you, John Sheeran, had your Al Golden headset on and your little quarter zip Bengals fleece on. Oh yeah. What would you do with them? What would you do? Would you play slot? Would you say, hey, boundary, or would you say boundary, kick into slot? What would you do?
I have to credit Jake Lisco for this of Locked On Bengals, because I think he put it perfectly. Make him Leon Hall. Leon Hall was outside in some cases, but he moved into the slot when he needed to in nickel. And I feel like you have the perfect athlete for that. Obviously, make sure that he's comfortable coming off of this injury to do both. But you have such a dynamic weapon in the secondary who, if his only weakness is, turning passes defense into interceptions, he can cover anyone. Like there's nothing athletically that he can't do in man and in zone and in catch coverage, whatever the case may be, in press. Like he's got the length to do that as well. Like he can do anything. And I feel like now, like we don't have full clarity on what the scheme is in terms of the secondary, but you're starting to see, guys, follow receivers in coverage in motion, and maybe not sticking to just one side of the formation, which was the case under Anarumo. I think you're going to have situations where you have Turner going into the slot, you have Taylor Britt going into the slot. I don't think that should be any different with Dax Hill if he is one of your starting cornerbacks. I think you'll see him at both, kind of positions, but where he succeeds most, I think that's kind of up for him to show us on the field. But I wouldn't have any reservations about moving him all over, both outside and inside of cornerback. I think he can handle anything.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's just right now for me, it's just be healthy, and then figure what the rest should fall into place. Do you think that? I guess this doesn't even really matter too much anyway, but I guess it's worth kind of mentioning. Do you think that Lou Anarumo just was not the coach to know what what to do with him, or do you think he was like, well, he could play safety for? Do you think there were some defensive deficiencies after a couple of years of free agency attrition, and it was just kind of like, well, we got to try him here, we got to get him on the field. The safety thing, like you said, didn't work so great. Do you think Golden is the key, I guess, to unlocking this, or was it? Are you still kind of a little concerned that we're not going to see the potential reached regardless?
I think that he's got the best chance out of all of these picks that haven't worked out yet to actually succeed, because that is what his profile indicated coming out of college. He was so good in college. He has the athleticism, he has the movement skills to translate from that level to the NFL. And even more so, I think, than a guy like Miles Murphy. I'm much more confident in Dax Hill as a prospect turning an NFL player. Obviously, this is year 4 and you're way past that at this point, but he's played enough, I think, where he should be comfortable starting a full season should he be healthy. And I think he was the prime example of this disconnect between, the personnel staff and the coaching staff in terms of these draft picks. Because I don't think, if obviously Luna Aruma didn't want to lose Jesse Bates, but I think if he wanted to replace Jesse Bates, it probably wouldn't have been Dax Hill, which is why he rarely saw the field as a rookie, and I don't think he was set up to succeed taking over for one of the best free safeties in the league as a second-year player who hardly played as a rookie. And then obviously they needed him at cornerback, so they just moved him all around the secondary without a cohesive plan. So I don't know if Al Golden is specifically the guy to do it, but I think if he is going to be the person to maximize these players, Dax Hill has the best chance of actually fulfilling his potential, I think.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I again, the traits are there. The athleticism is there. There was it last year, maybe against the Ravens, the first game, where he flew down the sideline and he was maybe a step or two behind, and then he kind of got in there and knocked the ball away, and that was where I was like, wow, the closing speed, even after quote unquote being beat, it would seem, you're streaking down the sideline, and I remember that play going, wow, I mean, that's a hell of a play. And those are the flashes that he has shown at a number of different spots. So we'll see what they do with him. I do think, whether it is his primary role or not, I do think the slot does suit him well in certain situations and against certain matchups. We can talk about what the Ravens do. They get all kinds of quirky with some of their receiving weapons and stuff. So maybe that makes sense in a matchup like that. And these are some of the guys, again, we talked about, you had mentioned this, and I've kind of echoed this since, a guy like Cam Sample, maybe that's a guy you just didn't really think about because he's injured, but you quietly miss, and maybe he got you a stop or two more in one of those Ravens games or something like that. Same with Dax Hill. Maybe he was just one of those guys where, particularly when you saw down the stretch, those last 4 or 5 games where the defense started to play better, some of the young guys really started to step up and play better. Had he been healthy, maybe he would have been one of those guys where you go, oh, this year, 2025, this guy's going to kill it. But you don't think about it because, unfortunately, the injury, right? And he just wasn't there. So I almost kind of put him a little bit in that sample boat that you mentioned a few weeks back, where it's like, you don't really think about him because, unfortunately, you think about him, but you didn't really think about his potential impact down the stretch or in those critical games, that first Steeler game, the second Ravens game, that sort of thing, where you go, man, could he have provided one extra turnover? Could he have gotten one extra stop that would have made the difference and got the Bengals into the playoffs?
I kind of look at him as like, he may not make the Jermaine Pratt play, but I think he just allows you to not worry about a position and allows other guys to play more freely. Like, he kind of helps, like, he's an important cog in the system to make it all kind of flow perfectly, where then you have your actual playmakers, the guys that will get their hands on the balls and create turnovers. Like, he allows those plays to happen because he's doing his job better than almost anyone else on defense, because again, he's got the athleticism to cover up with any wide receiver in the NFL. I truly believe that he's that good of an athlete, and it's just about getting him on the field and getting him more comfortable. And that's why it's so critical for him to have as much of a full training camp as possible, because if he does have the chance to start, I don't think that I know for a fact there's not 3 better cornerbacks on this team, and I know for a fact that he makes this defense better when he's out there.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Well, that is our latest make or break player, Dax Hill. Again, not saying, oh, he's fighting for his roster, Bengals roster life. It's, we got to, you want to get this defense turnaround. You got to figure out how to best use him. He's got to stay healthy. Again, a lot of this stuff is not really in Dax Hill's control, unfortunately. He's at the whim of what the coaches kind of play him and where they play him and that sort of thing, as well as freak injuries happen. And that's kind of been the case with him thus far. But if he stays healthy, I think the sky is the limit for a guy like Dax Hill, particularly against some of the AFC elite offenses, that sort of thing.